unthinkable for either man. Commentators Rod Harrington and Rod Studd.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so far a pointless Premier League for Gary Anderson and Simon Whitlock. The loser here is going to be under some pressure, and Gary Anderson has finished bottom of the pile in the last two Premier Leagues in 2013 and 2012. The year before that he won the whole shebang. Whitlock, a former runner-up in the tournament as well. These are normally two of the big hitters, Rodney, but at the moment, in the second week of competition, they're both looking anxiously at the bottom rather than the top of the table.
Yes, you're right, Rodders, but I think with Gary Anderson, the way he played against Barnveld last week, I mean, he played exceptionally well, over 100 average, 3 180s, 6 140s. I mean, that performance matched up against the way Whitlock played last week, that Anderson on the stats alone has got to come into, you know, a big favourite. But it's all about getting out the gate. If Gary Anderson can start hitting this treble 20, and as I say that, is this the first maximum of the match for Gary Anderson? And that's exactly what Gary Anderson and his fans wanted to see, those first 3 darts going in the treble 20.
Whitlock only narrowly avoided a whitewash. Would have been the second time he'd been whitewashed in the Premier League, the previous time by James Wade. And Lewis went 6-0 up before Whitlock got a leg on the board. He was feeling a little bit peaky last week. Simon Whitlock, restored to rude health. He's got to restore his game to rude health.
Yes, I see him the weekend, the UK Open qualifiers, and he didn't look very well. Cold and flu, that has put him on the back foot. And Whitlock's one of those players that needs to practice every day. So he misses a few days, he just feels in himself that he's not done the right preparation. Although he may be still firing on all cylinders, but in his own head, he's not confident with his own game.
44.
Ropey start for Whitlock. Anderson looking to go out in a dozen darts. It could go treble 17 for Bull. Go on, Gary, have a crack, son.
119.
Went for the crowd pleasing outshot.
Yeah, we do like to see the big bullseye finishes.
100.
And in the Premier League, that's what those big crowds want to see. So Anderson now just double 16 to smarten this leg up, and this is been one of the flaws of Anderson. But it's a tidy leg, a level 15 dart leg as we call it, and a nice, good start for Anderson.
Very much so. That's better, isn't it, Simon? Wand-wielding wizardry from Whitlock. His 5th season in the Premier League. Runner-up 2012 to Phil Taylor. Oh, now. Unlucky.
87.
So high is the standard, Rod, it'd almost be a surprise if there wasn't a 9-darter somewhere along the way in this tour around the UK and Ireland.
I totally agree with you. I mean, we mentioned a few times 6 at the weekend, and there's so many players, so many quality players around now that can do it. It's incredible, and well, you wouldn't bet that there wouldn't be a 9-darter in this Premier League this year.
It's half a dozen at the weekend. A brace from Phil Taylor.
100.
One of them to win the final against Adrian Lewis, and he has an immediate rematch against Jackpot tonight in Bournemouth. That coming next. Loose start from Whitlock. Should have plenty of time in this leg, though.
41.
Well, a 180 from here would put some pressure on. Now he's going to have to switch down to 19s.
87.
Oh, that's a bad dart from Gary Anderson. So 6 darts here for Whitlock to level it up. Maybe only 2. Double 19. Double 19 it is. 1 leg apiece here. That was a tidy leg from Whitlock.
100.
He's twice finished second in the table as well, so he's been one of the most consistent performers since entering the Premier League. That was off the back of him reaching the World Championship final in 2010 when he really announced himself on the PDC scene. He'd been runner-up in the BDO World Championship in 2008. And now, currently, world rank number 3, Simon Whitlock, his highest ever PDC world ranking. So this is a year when he needs to win tournaments, Rod, doesn't he?
90.
He does. I mean, he won the European Championships, which is the biggest tournament he's won, but he needs one of these big majors. You know, the Premier League, the Match Play, the Grand Prix, the World Championship. He needs to stamp his authority as you know, the big player, the legend in the game. I mean, he is a great player and he's got a lot of bottle. As we see the second, that's the second maximum of the match. And I do tell people, if you're going to hit 180s, hit them against the throw, because they're the when you want the 12 darters. With the throw, you can settle for 15 darts, but against, you need 12 darters.
Chance for one here. 2 treble 19s. Nestler leaves the ball.
139. Gary required.
Well, he's heaped the pressure on Anderson. Can still be done with treble 19. He's having to fathom out an improvisation on the combination.
52.
So,
to
break.
This is where he can't afford to miss. The big 9 is the easy part. The double 8 now, and straight in the middle for a breaker throw from Simon Whitlock. And again, we always say it, Rod, where you know, you win a leg against a throw, you work really hard to win that leg. You've got to hold on to your throw strongly. Don't use any more than 15 darts. Don't let your opponent back in the leg, in the game, and you know, keep the pressure on him.
He goes off with 59, and that lead has been obliterated already by Anderson.
80.
Mentioning the world rankings, Whitlock 3rd, Gary Anderson world rank number 17, which is frankly ludicrous for a man of his awesome natural ability. That just should not be anywhere near that ranking, Gary Anderson, Roger.
No, I mean, he's one of the rawest talents in the game. I just think he got lazy last year. You know, put himself on a downer too many times.
85.
Even when you're playing bad, always talk it up, because it'll give you self-confidence. And Gary, he talked himself down too much last year, especially in the Premier League, but he's come into it a lot fresher this year.
58.
And like you say, the way he hits treble 20s is just effortless.
His double percentage in the tournament is 43%. I mentioned that because everyone mentions it all the time about Anderson, and even he does, but mind you, he's only had 7 shots at a double in the entire tournament so far, Anderson. The scoring hasn't been sufficiently high. That is sufficiently high. Whitlock's 3rd maximum of the match, and in each of the previous legs, the maximum has set up a winning double.
92.
Well, he's probably going to think he's going to get 6 darts from here. The 158 from Anderson, it's obviously possible, but you don't see it that very often.
57.
Now the advantage is back here with Anderson. If he doesn't take it out, just set it up, and as I say that, he's hit the big one. Needs to find a treble. That's an opportunity missed from Gary Anderson to get this leg back.
Well, if you can slot one on top, it'll leave double 19. Well, it was awkward, but he didn't get the weight.
Gary, you require 119.
19, the route. That will still do. Treble 20 would have left top, so Anderson now on a wing and a prayer in this leg.
99. Simon requires 70.
He'd love to see his first dart go in the treble 18 and give him 2 darts at the 12s. Now, he doesn't want to have this dart pitch up too high. Well, how many times we say, don't miss those big numbers. He's let Anderson back in.
And in he is, in it goes. The match is level. Simon Whitlock missed big 20 and therefore didn't get a shot at double. Deary me. Not the beard to be feared.
97.
There was he.
It's just a lack of concentration. Just think, well, I'm only going to hit the big number, and you just throw it, and all of a sudden you think,
44.
what's going on? There's plenty of room to the left for Gary Anderson.
137.
But a good switch.
121.
Well, there's been some pretty erratic darts in this match, and it's followed the trend, really. This is much better. Wes Newton came back from 5-3 down to defeat Raymond van Barneveld 7-5, and Dave Chisnell came from 5-1 behind to pinch a point against Peter Wright in a 6-all draw.
100. Gary, you require 127.
6 darts for Anderson.
59.
Well, Whitlock, he knows that Anderson may only get 1 dart at a double, so a 140 here, or even a 180, puts huge pressure on the doubles. Now he needs another one. One you'd feel is not enough.
100. Gary, you require 60.
Well, Anderson looking at a possible 14-dart leg, and a 15-darter to start with. Double 16. Well, it's not the prescribed route, but it is a route.
Anderson, 6 legs, Simon.
Very good route. Route 68 rather than route 66, but he's in front, Gary Anderson, 3-2.
But Whitlock never really asked the question of him, did he? The 140 would have asked the question. It was very easy to go up and hit the 68 when your opponent is well over the 100. It's ironic that Anderson, his percentage of hitting the combinations is higher than if he gets 3 darts at a double. It's incredible.
Simon Whitlock earned a reputation in that 2010 World Championship as being the maestro of combination finishing. 3-figure ton-plus finishes were his speciality. That's Gary Anderson's speciality over the years.
Yes, I think if Whitlock could get that finishing power that he had when he first moved over, I mean, he was incredible. By far, even above Taylor and Barneveld at the time, who were playing at the top of their games. His ton-plus checkouts were incredible. And of course, when you've got that confidence, you don't only think, right, I can nick any leg, but it puts your opponent under pressure.
94. Gary, you require 126.
Well, Anderson will have to go for the ball if he hits the 19, with Whitlock leaving his signature shot. Bullseye for Anderson. Wow, Gary Anderson on fire in Bournemouth. 4-2 up. 3 legs on the spin for the Flying Scotsman.
And 2 combinations very cleanly.
46.
I keep saying it, when the fast throwers on the combination, they're absolutely brilliant. Give them 3 darts at a double, that's when they tend to mess around. So Whitlock, a lot of work to do. Just about to think that was his 4th maximum, but he's got to stop the rot. He's got to level it out here. He's got to win this leg.
He's out-maxing Anderson,
55.
but he's not out-muscling him. 3-2 in the 180s in Whitlock's favour. 4-2 in legs for Anderson.
57.
Not very often you see more 180s than 140s on that graph. Whitlock's got to break the throw. He needs to find a couple of trebles.
97.
The one, it just leaves that door open for Anderson to come in with one of those prolific visits with a maximum. And as I say that, Rodders, I think he's going to oblige.
140.
Well, it's good enough to leave Shanghai when he comes back, and Whitlock, who was given a real caning by Adrian Lewis in Liverpool, is in danger of going 3 adrift here, because Anderson, we've just seen him take out 126, and this is much more manageable, especially now he wants single for double.
100. Simon requires 60 yards.
Well, Anderson took this out a couple of legs ago very cleanly. Whitlock's only going to get one dart at double. And that's double 16. That's not a bad guide to follow this one up. A chance missed for Whitlock. So Anderson is double 10. Straight in the middle. A 5-2 lead for Gary Anderson, and a lot of work to do for the Aussie.
4 consecutive legs for Anderson. Last week Whitlock lost 6 consecutive legs to Adrian Lewis. Consecutive legs and a centipede from Whitlock's opponents. I'll tell you what, Rod is going to be propping up the pile in the Premier League if he doesn't get a wriggle on here.
134.
2 heavy defeats is not the start you want to be looking at, especially when after 9 weeks anyone under that thick black line is going home. The bottom 2.
And what happens when you get on a bit of a bad run? It ain't as if the following week you get an easier draw. That doesn't happen in this. Every time you step up there, you're playing one of the world-class players that if you're indifferent, you're going to get buried. So it's pressure every single week. The tour events in the middle, it can sharpen you up. But when you turn up after losing 2 out of 2, the third one becomes an awful lot harder.
95.
And a chance here for Anderson again. A big score here will really put the pressure on. That's an absolute plum dart for Gary Anderson. Surely he can't miss this, and doesn't. What a time to fire in a maximum.
Well, this would be a time to fire in a maximum in terms of finishes. It's on all right. The signature shot.
145.
Goodness me. That would have rocked the house. This will put Anderson for a guaranteed point, and Gary Anderson cleans up 45 and leads 6-2. He will not be beaten.
This is a good display from Anderson. Just under the 98 average, 3-1-80s, 4-1-40s. A good, tidy display. And Whitlock, really at 88, under 90 average, he will know when he looks at that. That's not good enough to win many games in this Premier League.
5 consecutive legs run off by Gary Anderson to wound Whitlock.
97.
Whitlock has got a bit of a history of losing a lot of legs on the trot, hasn't he? I mean, it started with Andy Hamilton in the match play. He's well in front. I think 15-8, goes on and loses 16-15 or somewhere around that score. He does have that history of, getting in his head. He just can't stop the rot.
Next week he's got Raymond van Barneveld. Anderson has Thornton in a all-Scottish matchup. Well, he can't go out on 169, but he won't be worrying about too much about that. He'll just be looking to tee it up. Ooh, unlucky.
123. Simon require 167.
Well, another chance to finish on the bullseye. The treble 20 will give him that chance just on the bottom wire. So Anderson comes back to wrap this up, which will be a very good display of darts from the Flying Scotsman.
Tops then! And Gary Anderson wraps up a resounding win against Simon Whitlock. 6 straight legs for the Flying Scotsman. And Whitlock is whipped once more. 7-2 to Anderson.
98.13 average, 70% on the doubles, 126 checkout as well on the way. And Gary Anderson flying on week 2 of the Premier League. Up next, Adrian Lewis against Phil Taylor. When these two turn up the heat, they really turn up the heat.